So what did come up in the SBR December 2022 exam? This is my hot review, or should I say cold review. I'm going to be walking the streets and telling you my thoughts on what came up. It was, of course, a time-pressured exam, but those of you who implemented the strategy of JMO, just move on, put yourself in the best possible position to pass the examination. But what came up in section A? Now, some of you will have sat different versions of the exam. But what I haven't had is a report of a big cash flow or a big foreign currency coming up in question 1. Seemingly in question 1, there was the calculation of goodwill. Now, that's a core area. And the distinction between NCI being measured at fair value and with a proportion of net assets. That's, again, a core area, something that I always bang on about. Some students were fortunate enough to have one of my favorite topics that came up in one of my mocks, control-to-control transactions. And really, I would expect people to have smashed that one. Deferred tax losses, yeah, appearing in question 1, but why not? And fair value adjustments. So that's the group accounts. It's not a big number crunching question. You've got to explain and apply your knowledge, and that comes from an understanding. Now, also in section A is the question 2 on ethics. And it appears across the exams there were 2 different questions. One seemed to be a more classic accounting treatment that's gone wrong, that suggests competence and integrity issues, revolving around revenue, revolving around how to correctly account for sale and repurchase arrangements, something like that. I have to say that, of course, I haven't seen these exams, but I have spoken to my students, I have listened to my students, and so I'm giving you a broad brush impression. The other exam had a different feel for ethics. You were more advising the senior executive director around data protection issues. And so it wasn't necessarily a question of accounting treatment. It was a question of confidentiality, I'm envisaging. Really important, of course, that with ethics, you're always tying things back to the core pillars. And important, of course, that we cover a range of different types of questions to do with ethics, because sometimes they are based around very specific accounting issues, and sometimes they're much more general and they're dealing with sort of behavior and cultural issues. Interesting. But what came up in section B? Well, so far as section B goes, I've had no reports of hedging being tested. I've had no reports of pensions either being tested. I've had reports of lots of different accounting standards being tested, though, in an applied way, which goes to reinforce the idea that it's about breadth of knowledge rather than depth. Although there was some depth on alternative performance measures, yeah, which nicely was in one of my mock examinations. Not everybody's favorite topic. And there was also some depth around share-based payments in one of the examinations. But a range of issues came up. Is it a lease? You know, how do you account for something if there's no IFRS? And so that links in with the framework. And arguably that's a sort of a current issue kind of topic. The other current issue that came up in some of the exams was our old friend, I say old friend, sustainability. And, you know, why do companies report sustainability issues? And particularly from the angle of an investor. What does an investor want? Why does an investor need that kind of information? Impairments, yeah, intangibles, practical little situations as to how to calculate and how to account for these things. So section B is never going to be a big number crunching question. There's 2 questions there, question 3 and question 4. But let's look ahead and let's talk about how we might deal with some of the issues around remote invigilation, what came up in the UK, and what's going to happen on results day. So I do support students doing the international, and I also support students doing the UK variant. And my understanding is that the UK variant this time revolved around some of those technical differences around group accounts. And that was pretty mainstream. I've yet to see the question, but I'm fairly happy with the feedback that I've got on that so far. Tech issues. Now, because SBR is sat on a Thursday, sometimes these issues are less relevant than the earlier days of the exam week. But if you are doing remote exams in the future, it's always really important to make sure you do your technical checks early, not the day before. It's always important that you log on early, not in the last minute of the window that you have. And it's always important that if there are issues, that you communicate directly with ACCA. They do have the ability, if you're doing the international exam, to defer you a week, to give you an opportunity to resit the exam the following week. So look, when it comes to results, I wish you all the best. The marking system is extremely rigorous and fair and organised by the ACCA. So what you get is what you get, and I wouldn't suggest there's any real merit in asking for a remarking, because there isn't a remarking process. There is a process which checks the systems, but it's not a remarking process. If I can help you in any way, shape or form prepare for the exam in March or June or in 2023, just reach out to me, please. I'm easily got hold of. But in the meantime, I'm getting cold, so I'm going to go back home. I'm nearly home now, so all that it remains for me to do is to wish you a very happy Christmas.